And then there is a third level, which is where the level I was addressing in Messengers of Deception, which is a social level.
The impact on our culture.
Yes, and the impact on our belief systems. Mm-hmm. And at that level, and that's something that's very difficult to convey to the believers in UFOs, the believers in little green men from space, you know, that at that level it really doesn't matter whether UFOs are real or not. If enough people believe that something is real, then it is real in its effects.
In terms of its social reality.
In terms of the social reality, in terms of what people act according to their beliefs.
In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound.
The World Health Organization tonight has now declared the outbreak a global health emergency.
This is a global crisis. We are a global community when it comes to a crisis like this, and in future times, and there may well be future times where we require this to combat what is a global crisis with global efficacy.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
And it's an old idea. It's an old idea.
Sure.
The way everybody, the ancient Roman emperors, they all dreamt for that one world government. They couldn't pull it off. There was no way they could pull it off, because the only way to make a new world order actually happen is you got to get the people to embrace it. You can't force them into it. All this stuff you hear about aliens and asteroids, it's all fake. First, there's going to be an environmental threat that they're going to scare everybody up with. Then there's going to be asteroid threats. And then the final one. And she says this, and he kept saying this because the final one, the last one they're going to do is the fake alien invasion. That's why there's movies like Independence Day. It gets everyone used to, we're all going to, let's call China and Russia and we all band together.
Good call.
It's to get us prepared for a one world government. That's what it's really all about.
In my last video, I talked about my opinion on the UFO phenomenon and how I don't believe that these craft have anything to do with little green men from some distant planet. I introduced the idea of these beings actually being interdimensional and perhaps even demonic in nature. My goal for this video, however, is to focus on a more grounded theory and the potential social implications of the UFO phenomenon. If it were revealed that aliens are real, the effect that this would have on humans and their belief systems is scary to think about. With that said, there are people who claim that the idea of extraterrestrials being a reality is slowly being used to deceive the masses, and that this will eventually culminate with some type of fake alien invasion. One of those people is Dr. Carol Rosins.
In 1974 through 77, I met the late Dr. Wernher von Braun. At that time, von Braun was dying of cancer, but he assured me that he would live a few more years in order to tell me about the game that was being played. That game being the effort to weaponize space, to control the Earth from space and space itself. And as practically a deathbed speech, he educated me about those concepts and who the players were in this game. The strategy that Wernher von Braun taught me was that first the Russians are going to be considered to be the enemy. In fact, when I met him in '74, they were the enemy, the identified enemy. Then terrorists would be identified, and that was soon to follow. We heard a lot about terrorism. And the next enemy was asteroids. Now at this point, he kind of chuckled the first time he said it. Asteroids, against asteroids, we're going to build space-based weapons. So it was funny then. And the funniest one of all was against what he called aliens, extraterrestrials. That would be the final card. And over and over and over, during the 4 years that I knew him and was giving his speeches for him, he would bring up that last card. And remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We're going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens. And all of it, he said, is a lie.
Before we get into the claims made in the video, let's talk a bit about the characters involved. Carol Rosins was the first woman to become an executive in the aerospace industry as a corporate manager at Fairchild Industries, which was a US aerospace company, where she was also the spokesperson for the late Dr. Wernher von Braun. Wernher von Braun was a member of the Nazi Party and the Allgemeine SS during World War II. During this time, he received his doctorate in aerospace engineering and worked on various forms of rocketry, including the A4V2 rocket. He was also deeply involved with Operation Paperclip and eventually worked for NASA, where he led in the development of the Saturn V rocket that took Apollo 11 to the moon. What's also fascinating is Wernher von Braun's friendship with Walt Disney. According to the NASA website, von Braun and Disney worked together to create 3 space-related television films that Disney produced in the 1950s in order to promote interest in space exploration.
Now here's a model of my design for a 4-stage orbital rocket ship. Compared to the unmanned instrument rocket, it is quite large, but the overall size and weight of the rocket is mainly determined by the 11 tons weight of this top section.
Eventually, Wernher von Braun went on to work for Fairchild Industries and met Carol Rosins. Going back to the claims that Carol Rosins makes in the video, although it is undeniable that both von Braun and Carol Rosins worked for Fairchild Industries and no doubt worked together as seen in the picture, it still remains unclear as to why Wernher von Braun would trust her with such secret information. With that said, what does give credence to her claims, at least in my opinion, is the fact that she mentions that Wernher von Braun did not go into details about the larger plan of the fake extraterrestrial threat or the timeline involved.
He didn't mention a timeline, but he said that it was going to be speeding up faster than anybody could possibly imagine. And when he mentioned the extraterrestrial card, the extraterrestrials, aliens he called them, were going to be identified as the final enemy against whom we were going to build space-based weapons back in '74, the way he said it to me, there was no doubt in my mind that he knew something that he was too afraid to talk about. Wernher von Braun never spoke to me about any of the details that he knew related to extraterrestrials, except that extraterrestrials were one day going to be identified as an enemy against whom we are going to have to build an enormous space-based weapon system. Even though he didn't give me the details, however, the look in his eyes made it clear to me that he knew that there was something going on that was a big secret that he could not divulge.
I do want to mention that I don't agree with Carol Rosins on her personal views regarding the reality of extraterrestrial life, as she shares a similar view as Stephen Greer, who I criticized in my last video. With that said, I do think that there is a chance she could be telling the truth. And in the chance that Wernher von Braun did confide in her the secret of some type of fake extraterrestrial threat, what big secrets did he keep from her that he was too afraid to tell? Although there is no way to know for certain, I do have a few guesses. I believe it is possible that we could be living in the times that Wernher von Braun supposedly warned about all those years ago. I now want to take a small look at why we could be living in those times. One of the things that I find most fascinating about the UFO phenomenon is its sudden resurgence that took place in the year 2020. On July 23, 2020, the New York Times posted an article regarding the reality of the UFO phenomenon, along with some videos that were made public by the US Navy. The article received a lot of attention due to a quote by Eric W. Davis, a consultant for the Pentagon UFO program, who said that some of the craft that had been retrieved were off-world vehicles not made on this Earth. Much of the media has also taken the time to cover what used to be considered a fringe topic.
Top Pentagon officials will be grilled by members of a House Intelligence Subcommittee, the first public hearing on UFOs or UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, in more than half a century.
UAPs present a very real national security risk, and the Intelligence Committee has a responsibility to investigate.
Another UFO segment. That's crazy. You'd have to be crazy to believe that's possible. Really? A fascinating conference today about UFOs and nuclear weapons that took place in Washington.
What's also fascinating to me is how the topic is being discussed among online internet personalities who most likely would not have been speaking about such things just a few years ago.
There are unidentified aerial phenomena being observed by United States military aircraft Apparently it's happening with some frequency.
Obviously, we don't know exactly what that is or what those things are. And in order to come up with any kind of like probability that it's aliens, we need some background information that we don't have. We need to know, are there aliens in the universe? Mm-hmm. And how many such civilizations are there? And where are they? And what sort of technology do they have?
Publish this story. A bunch of naval destroyers have tic-tac-shaped objects hovering for 90 minutes at high speed, just sitting there, beyond commercial drone technology. And they don't know what it is. So Marco Rubio talked about it, and he was like, whatever's going on with these things flying over our military installations, it's like a national security breach. Like, our security has been breached, and we don't know what it is.
Some people are even going as far to say that we might be the first generation to make contact with some type of alien species.
I think in this century, we'll probably pick up signals from an extraterrestrial civilization. We'll pick up their I Love Lucy and their Leave It to Beaver. Just ordinary day-to-day transmissions that they emit.
The UFO phenomenon seems to have transformed from a niche topic into some type of reality. People are pushing for disclosure more than ever, and perhaps it will indeed come sooner rather than later. But I would consider it naive to overlook the fact that this sudden resurgence of UFO interest seems to have correlated with other global events that took place in 2020, as well as other crazy events that have transpired since. It's also worth noting that the United States Space Force was established in 2019, which can be considered as a continuation of the weaponization of space, which is what Carol Rosins and supposedly Wernher von Braun predicted would occur.
It is not enough to merely have an American presence in space. We must have American dominance in space. So important. To immediately begin the process necessary to establish a space force as the sixth branch of the armed forces. That's a big statement.
Is it possible that all these events could be leading to some type of revelation regarding the reality of ETs? If Wernher von Braun was correct, and there eventually will be a fake extraterrestrial threat, for what purpose would it serve those orchestrating such a sinister plot? The best idea that I can think of would be to implement a one-world government or system. Some also call it a New World Order or the furthering of the Great Reset. But why would people use something so absurd as a means to implement this global system? As mentioned by Eddie Bravo in the intro of the video, the best way to go about integrating a global system would be to have the people of the world embrace it. Without some type of outside threat, it's apparent that most people in countries would not go along with the implementation of a global system for no reason. If, however, there was an outside threat that required the world to band together, then perhaps most people would be willing to lay aside their differences and identify as one world united.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Just listen to James Fox, who appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast with Jacques Vallée, talk about how unifying the reality of extraterrestrials would be to humanity.
Well, one of the things that I'm very optimistic about is that we're living in extremely divided times right now. And this is a story that transcends politics, transcends religion and borders. Whether people believe it or not, they're curious. And I think ultimately when this story is starting to come out, and there are people behind the scenes working diligently to get it to come out, that it's going to have a very unifying effect on humanity. I mean, I sound like a, group hug moment here, but I actually do believe that it'll force us to look at ourselves as who we really are. One race, one planet.
Although it is a wild idea to believe that a group of people have slowly been working to bring about this one-world system via a fake alien threat, there have been other bizarre hypothetical plots that took place in the past. Jacques Vallée, in an interview, talks about a plot to remove Fidel Castro from power that was discovered as a result of the Watergate investigation.
I would remind you that during the Watergate investigation, it was discovered that there was a plan originated in the White House to surface a submarine off the coast of Cuba and paint the second coming of Christ over the island of Cuba using holograms. Which is well within our technology today. The idea was that since there is a large Catholic population in Cuba, they would be so upset by this vision that this would saturate the communication channels, the telephone system in Cuba, long enough for an invasion to take place.
I searched online to find evidence of this event, but was not able to until I found a link to a document titled Alleged assassination plots involving foreign leaders. The document is from November 20th, 1975, and is essentially a testimony of a man named Thomas A. Parrott, who was a former CIA official. In the document, Parrott tells the tale of Major General Edward Lansdale and his plot to create a type of fake return of Jesus in an attempt to have Fidel Castro removed from power. On page 142 of the document it reads, "I'll give you one example of Lansdale's perspicacity. He had a wonderful plan for getting rid of Castro. This plan consisted of spreading the word that the second coming of Christ was imminent and that Christ was against Castro, who was Antichrist. And you would spread this word around Cuba, and then on whatever date it was, that there would be this manifestation of this thing, and at this time, this is absolutely true, and at that time, just over the horizon, there would be an American submarine which would surface off of Cuba and send up some star shells, and this would be the manifestation of the second coming, and Castro would be overthrown." The fact that technology would be used as a type of psychological warfare weapon so long ago makes the idea of a fake alien invasion being used to push the world towards a global government much more realistic. The idea of the fake return of Christ being used as a means to manipulate a group of people that was used by Major Lansdale parallels a popular conspiracy theory known as Project Bluebeam. Project Bluebeam is a conspiracy theory that was popularized by Serge Monast, who essentially believed that there would be a simulated return of various major religious figures that would be beamed through holograms and projected into space, in order to push the people of the world into a one-world government, system, and religion. I don't want to go too deep into this theory, as a lot of the ideas are a bit too wild for me to entertain, as it gets into mind control via radio waves and other wild ideas. Perhaps I will make a video going deep into the topic, but for now, I will leave it at that. With that said, the idea of some type of apocalyptic event that could be used to deceive the masses is not that crazy when compared to the plot of General Lansdale. I truly believe that there is a chance that a major part of what the UFO phenomenon could be is simply a mass deception that will eventually culminate with a fake extraterrestrial threat and lead many to embrace a one-world system. And assuming Carol Rosin was correct about Wernher von Braun, knowing some deep secret, this could be what he was keeping to himself. To finish off the video, I want to take a look at what the Bible says about the last days and how it could be alluding to these various events in the future. There are various passages within the Bible that could be tied to some type of fake alien threat. First off, it's fascinating that various books within the Bible, when speaking about the last days before Jesus' return, are often characterized by deception. There are multiple instances of Jesus and the apostles giving strict warnings to not be deceived and to be on guard against various false ideologies. For example, in Matthew 24, Jesus states multiple times how many will be deceived just before his return. In verses 4 to 5, Jesus says, "Watch out that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name claiming I am the Messiah and will deceive many." The Greek word for name here is onama, which can mean character, name, fame, or reputation. When I originally heard about Project Bluebeam and the plot to remove Fidel Castro from power, those conspiracies immediately reminded me of this passage. Although it is crazy to think that some will come and claim to be Jesus, or even that a hologram of some type could simulate the return of Jesus, it's an interesting idea to tie Project Bluebeam to this verse and consider that Jesus could have been alluding to some type of event like this. Of course, there is no way to know for certain how these events will pan out, but it is something to keep in mind when researching these various topics. There is one verse in particular that I think about when studying the potential fake extraterrestrial threat. In 2 Thessalonians, Paul the Apostle gives a rundown of various events that will take place during the end times just before Jesus' return to Earth. Paul makes a powerful statement in verse 11 where he says, "For this reason, God sends them a powerful delusion so that they will believe the lie." It seems that in this verse, Paul is specifically talking about one lie in particular that will be the defining deception of the last days. Although we cannot know for certain what this specific lie is, it's most likely one of the most powerful lies to be crafted throughout all of human history. I believe that there is a good chance that this could be referring to some type of fake alien threat or invasion, whether man-made via holograms or even demonic. Another passage that alludes to some type of fake extraterrestrial threat comes from Luke 21:26, which says, "Men's hearts failing them for fear and the expectation of those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken." The fact that this verse refers to things coming on the earth seems to have some type of extraterrestrial tone to it, but perhaps I am reading too much into the verse. The Bible, however, is clear about one major event that will take place in the last days. That is, the establishment of a one-world system, including a one-world government and religion. In my last video, I talked about the dream Nebuchadnezzar had regarding the statue with different parts that represented all the kingdoms of the world, starting with ancient Babylon. Going back to the final kingdom again, there is a similar passage in Daniel 7 that alludes to the same kingdom, this time using 4 different beasts as symbols for the various kingdoms, with the last beast devouring the whole earth. This implies that the final kingdom will indeed be worldwide. What the Bible does not specify is how humanity will enter into this one-world system. When looking at these various passages and connecting them with current events, it seems like we might be able to come up with one scenario of how all these events could potentially play out. Perhaps there will be some type of fake alien invasion, whether as a threat or of peace, that will end up being the great deception spoken of by Jesus and the various apostles. Because of this lie, it will somehow cause all of the nations of the world to come together and embrace a new one-world system. To tie this all with Project Bluebeam, it is possible that some of the craft could be man-made, perhaps even holographic, similar to the Project Bluebeam theory. As mentioned in my last video, I am still unsure as to how much of the UFO phenomenon can be considered to be demonic, and how much I believe it to be man-made, as I feel both aspects are present and not mutually exclusive. I think there is a chance that both aspects could be tied together somehow, or perhaps they are just separate events that happen to be occurring at the same time. I do believe, however, that the UFO phenomenon will continue to increase in popularity and most likely lead to some type of fake extraterrestrial threat spoken of by Wernher von Braun, as well as fulfill a variety of end-time prophecies from within the Bible. Again, there is no way to know for certain whether Carol Rosins was telling the truth regarding the supposed claims of Wernher von Braun, but it seems like current events are trending in that direction, and I advise all to be skeptical regarding any potential future claims or revelations regarding aliens or extraterrestrials, whether friendly or hostile.